Hey everybody, this is Will C, and I have a story for you guys today. Every week I'll upload a brand new story on Twitch talking about a random word that I'm given, and I'll condense that video down for YouTube. The video is going to go over the story itself and the literary techniques behind it. This week's word was silence, and this is what I came up with. As the service ends, Wedgemere's friends begin to leave, but Wedgemere remains. He is distraught about what his father took with him and the emptiness left behind. As he stares past the mountainous horizon, wonders how life will be different. As the sun rises, Wedgemere descends to the surface world below, the city that he's known his whole life. Why do things have to end this way? Why must they always end this way? Wedgemere wanders the surface for a while, floating past abandoned buildings and statues from a long-forgotten era. The cold air intermingles with the sun's warm rays as they shine over the town, past its perimeter to the small creatures in the distance. Several infants are playing with a small ball where their parents watch them. Wedgemere sits with them for a while. Their parents never take their eyes off the children, and the parents never stop smiling. As Wedgemere is about to leave, a small ball rolls over to him. He picks up the small reflective sphere and hands it back to the father. They laugh, and he carries on. After wandering a little farther, Wedgemere comes across a child fighting with his parent. As Wedgemere inches closer, the child runs away, and the father shakes his head, as if to say, "You'll understand one day." Wedgemere observes him for a while, but eventually the child comes back. They embrace and laugh. Wedgemere carries on. Wedgemere is about to go back home, but he notices a dim light in the distance. As he walks over, there's an older creature on the bed and is not looking very well. The adult in the room walks out to get more supplies, and Wedgemere is left alone once again with the oldest member of the pack. They stare at each other for a brief moment, and as the son walks back in, the older patient gives him a brief smile, which he then shares with his son. Finally, Wedgemere was ascending back home. The magnetic fields that had allowed him to hover before were slowly dissipating, but not before giving him one last gift. As Wedgemere's feet hit the ground of his city, he turns back and sees the sky light up with magnificent colors. Vibrant blues and greens cut through the starry sky. Wedgemere sits, his legs dangling over the edge of his city, and he watches the colors come and go with the demands of nature, knowing that in all the darkness, in all the silence, they're still there. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. It was really fun for me to write this story, and I loved giving Wedgemere this really interesting character arc. However, when the random word generator first gave me the word silent to base this story on, I was like, oh no, how am I going to base a story on a society that cannot communicate? So I tried to find a way to subvert this. I started looking into touch as an alternative method of communication, but that presented a few different problems. For example, if someone just brushes up against you, how do they interpret that sort of action? How can this society differentiate between a purposeful touch, meaning, hey, go do this, I mean to say this, versus someone just tripping on someone else and brushing up against you? And beyond that, how do they deal with natural weather processes that they can't counteract? What happens when every single drop of rain feels like some sort of attack? But then that got me thinking. These natural processes of planets, like weather, can in of themselves be the communication method. What if the society can sense and manipulate the planet's magnetic fields? And I kind of toyed around with this idea for a little while, and I came up with this sky refinery sort of idea. If the society does rely on the planetary magnetic fields, they would need to refine whatever is allowing them to do this if it isn't innate. So what if they had to mine for it and then refine it in order to keep afloat? If these cities were aloft, they could easily defend themselves against enemies. They could control what the atmospheric pressure and temperature was in order to best suit their society, and I thought it'd be a really interesting sort of setting for the story. Plus, it also creates this really cool dichotomy between those who can use this magnetic power and hover on these very lofty high sky refineries versus the surface creatures on the floor who don't have this advanced technology but possess like this natural wisdom. Now that I had this really interesting world with a character who cannot communicate auditorily, I wanted to see how silence could better generate a conflict for the main character. The best way to represent the theme of silence for me is having the character deal with an internal conflict by experiencing some sort of loss or absence. Eventually I found the idea of having the main character's father pass away. This creates a really interesting dynamic of not only does the main character have to struggle with the loss of his father itself, but he also has to struggle with who he is without his father being there. And it's a really interesting coming-of-age story, in a sense. When Wedgmere descends to the surface world, he is metaphorically sinking deeper and deeper into his depression and turmoil. But each of his encounters with these creatures helps him understand his father's point of view. In each case, Wedgmere is represented by the younger creature, and he has some sort of connection or relationship with the older creature, representing his father. He begins to understand why his father acted the way he did, and without his father, he wouldn't have become the man who he is today. Once he begins acknowledging this, he can walk on the surface instead of floating above it, thus acknowledging his new reality. And once he's ready, he's able to ascend back to his Sky City with the knowledge that he's gained. The idea for the colors at the very end of the story came more out of inspiration than it did a well-thought plan. I remembered that the Northern Lights were based on the Earth's magnetic fields, and since Wedgmere society is built on magnetic field manipulation, I felt that these colors would give a really satisfying conclusion to the story. It symbolizes the idea that after you die, you merely exist in a different form in the universe. Wedgmere knows his father, and even though his father is just in a different form, he isn't really gone. And Wedgmere can move forward knowing that he's never really alone. This gives the audience a really nice bittersweet feeling, highlighting the importance of familial bonds, and I thought it was a really interesting note to end on. I thought it was really nice, really satisfying, and I thought it was a pretty good ending. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see me do this sort of thing live, I am streaming over on Twitch on Saturdays from 2 to 4 p.m. I'm also raising money through Twitch for Feeding America and their COVID-19 response. If you have an extra $1 or $2, please consider donating because it can really make a difference and go towards helping some people in need. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see where the next story takes us. Thanks, guys.